We have another follow-up question from Maureen from Facebook, who asks if we'll now be able to screen migrants like they do in Australia.
Well, the government's current plan is that we should apply similar rules to immigrants coming from outside the EU. Similar rules to immigrants coming from inside the EU that we currently apply to immigrants coming from outside the EU. So if you're coming from outside the EU at the moment, you either have to pass qualify for a work visa under there's a bunch of thresholds relating to skills and salary and so on, or you have to come here as a spouse or family member, and again there are a bunch of qualifications you have to pass. In particular, your spouse has to be earning a certain amount of money, or there are other ways that you may come. So in future we'll be applying rules very much like that to people coming from inside the EU as well as coming from outside the EU. So in that sense we can screen people. I should emphasise though that this idea that after Brexit we won't have any of the immigrants we don't want and we'll have only the ones they don't want. This is a fantasy. This is not how immigration works in the real world. It doesn't happen in Australia, and it's certainly not going to happen here. And there are two reasons for this. One is that it's really difficult for governments to choose the immigrants that they want. The idea, there's a lot of people talk a lot about this, and it's about as sensible as the idea that the government can centrally plan the economy in the way that the Soviets did in the 1960s and 70s, and it's likely to be equally successful. The idea that people in Whitehall, because that's what it means, people in Whitehall, in a department in Whitehall, civil servants like I used to be, sitting there and saying, well, we need some more of these people and fewer of these people. That's not how a market economy works, let's face it. And the second reason is that immigrants have to choose us. We can't just say, oh, you have to come here. They have to want to come here. And of course, what we've seen since the Brexit vote is that fewer immigrants already, even though we haven't changed, we haven't introduced this new system yet, but fewer of the immigrants we want are coming. We're getting considerably fewer doctors and nurses from the EU. So the idea that, we'll have this wonderful new system, we'll have more doctors and nurses because there's the people we want and fewer fruit pickers or baristas. Actually, even before Brexit, we see that we're losing doctors, nurses, and skilled workers because they no longer want to come here. So you have to remember that this idea that we can just say who we want and they'll come doesn't work. But this is a market economy; people have to choose.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like it's quite complicated, like in terms of the factors that kind of come into how immigration works and what that means for how the UK is made up.